On this episode of Lowbuck Garage, I cut my way into a trailer. I find a calculator. That is the biggest calculator I've ever seen in my life. And then I buy this truck. If you've seen some of my previous videos up here at the Lowbuck Mine, you might know I unintentionally ended up with semi-trailers. A few of them. And I don't like where they are, so I need to move them around a bit. But come to find out, they're very heavy. And they have air brakes, which makes it a little tricky to move. Which gave me a perfect excuse to buy another truck. But I'm getting ahead of myself. In a previous video, I showed you the contents of some of those trailers, but there's one I didn't have a key for. But now I brought a universal key. Let's take a look inside. Gas heater. That's a heavy-duty belt. Looks like a garage door opener. Real old one. Ooh, a leech screw. Or Acme screw, probably. Some kind of drive screw. Someone was serious about security on this one. Contents unclassified, though. So what's in here? Nothing. Chrysler Motors. Huh. I don't recognize the car, but it looks like it could be useful. I've got two of them. Very safe door. Ooh, a wood stove. Nice. No more rims. 4-lug. Not that exciting. Motor speed control. Some kind of heater. See heating elements in there. Full desk with a very avocado green chair. More avocado green. Piles of boxes. 1987 receipts. Mining records. More documents. Oh, those are neat drawers. Huh. Black Mesa Coal Field. Mining districts and mineral deposits of Arizona. Black Canyon City. Geology plan. Back when overhead photography was really expensive. Sample locations. Tons of data here. Favorable but insufficient basis of estimation of potential uranium resources. If you ever want to know where uranium is in the US, I got the map. Good sized charger, 36 volt. That'd be handy for a golf cart. Electrostatic copier. Repaired, 22482. A dictaphone. Couple of them. What is that? Electronic calculator. Oh, that is funny. That is the biggest calculator I've ever seen in my life. Decimal point. Wow. I had to pull out this calculator. It's a Frieden. That thing is huge. That is a big heatsink. And for a sense of scale, those buttons are big. Which means this whole thing that's way bigger than the buttons is really big. There's a tiny little video monitor in there to see what you're doing. Bet some of this stuff is valuable if anyone knew what it was or what it could be used for. Time for some celebratory donuts. I put that calculator on eBay and I was really surprised how much it went for. So I invested that money found in those trailers, plus a few $100s, into a truck that could move those trailers. Eventually. Of course it doesn't run, so I had to push it behind the shop so I could work on it. It was so flat in the front I was worried about damaging the grill, so I turned the tow tug into diagonal mode and just used a corner of the bumper to push it. And here it is. I finally have a truck big enough to haul those trailers. I had no way to get it here, so I hired my buddy Skipper to flat tow this thing here. It took him 2.5 days and 3 flat tires because he had to go on dirt roads and stuff, so he stayed off public streets. But it got here. So he's the one that added those brackets onto the bumper for towing it, and a few other things had to be done along the way. Since this truck was so cheap, I expect it to be not good. Let's see how not good it is. I don't know a whole lot about the history of this truck. It was last registered in 1996. So that's going on almost 30 years ago now. My understanding was they stopped using it because it didn't have power steering, and then it got used as target practice for local kids with rocks in the windows. So I don't think it was broken when it was parked, but that was 29 years ago. Windows, obviously, I'm never gonna have to worry about washing them. They're always gonna be perfect visibility and lots of ventilation. There's one headlight remaining. Various bits of rope attached here and there. Not sure what those are for. We've got a plastic grille with what appears to be door screen wired in, but it's nicely made door screen, so that might have been factory. Now the whole upper structure is a holdover from hauling mobile homes. Generally mobile homes are really wide. You need to do the wide load permit. Would have had those flashing lights on top, which were smashed. The mirrors are set up to go real wide. You can see there's a set screw there. It's tubing inside a tube. So you loosen the set screw, you can slide this mirror way out. This truck is made by White, who are the same manufacturer that made those half tracks. Now, because I'm moving those trailers around a small area, I wanted the most maneuverable thing I could find, and this is it. It's got a real stubby wheelbase. The cab's actually in front of the front axle. This is what's known as a Road Xpeditor. Looking up that name, I found a little bit of information about this truck. You'd be hard-pressed to make something more maneuverable than this one. Looks like the signal lights are jammed in, these little front things. I'm not 100% sure what these are for, but I'm looking at the fact that they're right in front of the door hinge. I wonder if it's a way to reduce wind noise. The vent window survived. Kind of neat steel fender flares here. I like the little eyebrow molded into the cab. That's got some good style to it. A tachograph, obviously broken glass. Most likely the whole thing's broken. Let's take a look inside. There's some kind of fluid reservoir inside the door. That's interesting. According to the brochure, that was a windshield washer bottle, and being in the door was a good thing. There's the transmission, a Fuller Road Ranger RTO 9513. Apparently they're a twin countershaft unit meant for lots of torque. I'm gonna have to figure out how to drive this thing. We have a low 1, 2, 3, 4, an overdrive split, a high range and a low range, and then a regular shift pattern on top of that, or under that, I'm not really sure. Overdrive split in 5, 6, 7, and 8th gear only. Engine start button, ignition switch, lots of bare wires, some cut off. There may have been some shortcuts taken throughout the wiring. Engine stop, all right, that's good. Good old external signal lights. The seat itself is pretty small. Looks like a boat seat. Climb on in here. Temperature, RPM, speed, fuel level, probably oil pressure looks like. Somewhere there should be an air pressure gauge too. What's that? Maybe that's air. Light switch, looks like a separate knob for each wiper. That doesn't move. None of these really move. Oh, that says fan. Trailer air supply. Parking brake. Hole to apply. So those will be air valves. Yeah, this is the 70s. Gotta have our ashtray. An audio Vox radio with a custom wooden enclosure. This is probably something more for our company use where they know how far and how fast you're driving, something like that. A lot of loose wires coming from the ceiling. And speaking of which, the ceiling looks like it's ready to fall off. Window gasket. Oh, hey. There's a sun visor. Nicely padded. You're gonna have to figure out the shift lever. There's the shift pattern again. A little over 250,000 miles on the odometer. I got the passenger door open. Got some spare bits, the spare bolts to put the axle back together. Random taillights. That's pretty much it. Very basic cab. I'm gonna lube up all these cables, make sure they move. And I think I'm gonna disconnect all the wiring for now because that doesn't look promising. Got a little access panel here. Oh. There's a coolant level. I don't really see coolant. It's probably just low, something like that. Looks like a dipstick here. That's a lot of dipstick. There's oil on it that doesn't look like a milkshake. That is a good sign. At least the engine wasn't ruined when it was parked. Speaking of the engine, that's one of the reasons I bought this truck. I don't know much about these big trucks, but this one has an engine I've heard of before. And I've heard they're good. I have to figure out how to do the cab flipping thing here. There's handles. Another handle down here. That doesn't seem to move. I think you pull down to go up. That one white handle comes across. It looks like it goes to this latch. And I've got that one freed up. But there's another one down here. That goes to a lever here. That latch has to go this way, which means that rod has to go that way, which means this lever has to go up from that lever. So this has to go up somehow. Oh, it's moving slightly. Gonna try some extra leverage on the lever. Got it open. Now I can see the roof a little better. These are those strobe lights that are broken, clearance lights that are broken, and that's where the mirror slides into the tubing. It looks like there's a third revolving light that's gone. CB antenna, need that. I think these are the trailer connectors for the air brakes and the lights. This is the reason I bought this truck. It's got a 671. That is a lot of engine. It's like a wall here. So we have the big straight six. Wonder what used to be there. Alternator, gigantic radiator. There's the air compressor for the brakes. Looks like it has some torch cut reinforcing, so it's probably very sturdy. The shift lever right there goes in here, and that comes out the bottom to a U-jointed shaft. There's where the shift linkage comes out into the transmission, which is a pretty substantial unit. I can read the plate there. It's a 1975 engine, 250 horsepower at 2300 RPM. Here's that cab release mechanism I was fighting. There's the latch, goes to a linkage, bell crank, down here. Gonna have to get that working better. 80-gallon tank, and there's one on this side and another one on that side. Connected with a couple of valves here. Looks like this truck has seen some off-roading. That side step definitely has had hard contact. Disconnected air line. I bet these brakes aren't going to work on the first shot. This is the hitch I need for towing those trailers, so that's important. The rear used to have one of those adjustable hitches for the mobile homes. That was cut off years ago, but I don't need that. Under here, we have the air brake cans, a lot of hoses, which I got to figure out. And I see a tag. It's a Rockwell axle. The internet didn't have very much useful information on this one. Oh well. It's a pretty good sized one. That's something that happened when towing it here. Apparently the drive shaft wouldn't come off, so in order to not spin the transmission over, he yanked the axle shafts out so it would freewheel. That's just a cover plate to keep the oil in. I see an oil fill there for the engine, and it looks like this is another oil fill they can get to while the cab's closed. Now I first heard the term 671 back when I was reading hot rod magazines in the 80s, and it was a supercharger they put on V8s. This is one of those superchargers. On gas engines, they were used to cram more air in to create more power. This engine works kind of different. This is actually a two-stroke engine, not using that to boost airflow, they're just using that to shove the air through in order to get it to operate. So it needs that to function. But this type of engine is where those were stolen from to put on hot rods before they started making their own. Now we can have a gear drive on the back. That goes to this blower housing. Let's see, the fuel pump's on the other side of the blower housing. Then we have the air intake here, and that's going to have the air going in. Then this is going to shove the air into the engine, and it'll make nice happy power. Not sure what that is. It might be a safety to shut the engine down, and it's frozen solid, so we might have to look at that. This looks like the throttle linkage, which also feels solid, rusted. Oh, I bet this is how they shut it down, is this cable to shut off the fuel to the injectors. That's probably a water pump. It's got a valve. That would be for your heater in the cab. Now, I knew these engines have a good reputation. My dad's had a few of these Detroit diesels. All of his HD5s had 271s, which is a two-cylinder version of the same engine. They just start and work. Hey, I think the other cylinder just cut in. I hope this does that too. Out the back of the engine, there's a belt drive to that air pump. Looks like it's supposed to have two belts and they just replaced it with one. That looks like a big oil filter. I think I can get to the bolt at the end of the crankshaft here and see if I can get a wrench on this and maybe get it to turn. There's a very high possibility this is seized. If it turns, I'll feel a lot better. It moves. It's not seized. That's something big there. This throttle linkage could be an issue. Let me fiddle with that a little bit. The pedal hits that part of the throttle linkage, goes up, goes to this rod and this bell crank, and they seem to move. And it goes up to this rod, and that seems to move. Looks like all of these need lubrication. And that goes to here, which seems to move less. Gonna start soaking some things in oil. I started greasing up the throttle linkage, then I started greasing up everything else. The steering linkage, the cab pivots, even my cab latch has a grease fitting. I separated out this bit of throttle linkage, that way I can isolate the problem. It looks like this is free. This one, it's starting to move a little bit. I can start working this one now. This cable is not gonna work. It's broken in half right there. But I did get the linkage working. This is a little flapper arm, and that has a shaft all the way through to the other side. That's the air intake. So I think what's happening is a flap is closing up the air intake to starve the engine of air. This is the catch. You pop this open, and that moves over. Then we can reset it by opening the flap, setting the latch. Now it's in the run position. When I sprayed oil on these, I could see in the rubber there it has EM something. Then it looks like it says stop on the bottom too. So I'm quite sure that's the emergency stop cable that shuts off the air. That clutch pedal probably shouldn't be directly on the floor, huh? That doesn't feel like it's going to do anything useful. And move something there. Where does that go? This is what the clutch pedal operates under the cab. And this is what the throttle pedal operates. Looks like neither the clutch or the throttle is hooked up. I wonder if they automatically disconnect when you flip the cab forward. We're gonna have to flip the cab backwards to figure this one out. There's a flat bar torsion spring, and that's where this cab pivots. That's an assist to raise and lower this cab. Okay, closing the cab is trickier than opening it. Wonder how much all of that stuff weighs. Those haven't moved in a while. You can actually put the side view mirrors out here. That seems excessive. This thing's actually pretty heavy. Alright. Definitely better. Not great. But there's still some more channel to take off. This windshield is a really convenient access hole. That works out really well. Got the front bolts out, the back ones will be tricky. Let's see if we can flip it back one last time before we take off the extra weight. I heard a click. Nope. Maybe. Huh. It's not an easy process. Never thought about this as the difficult part of operating this thing. Looks like this rod is bent, which is keeping this latch from opening all the way. So I'm going to see if I can straighten this out with it in place. Oh, it was already half broken. We'll deal with fixing that later. There we go. As long as the clutch is released when you flip the cab back, these two hooks just fit right together. I got a pile of stuff here that hooks to the trailer. That'd be the connector plug full of dirt. And that goes through this wiring here to that connection there. But I won't need that because I'm not going to care about lights. I will care about working the air brakes, which go through these hoses. Well, so for now I get rid of this whole pile because it's not going to work. Gonna take a look under here. First thing I notice is, wow, that oil pan is taking a beating. This lower sump is all smashed in, and this lower sump has been smashed into the main pan. This thing has run over some stuff. But the main reason I'm under here is I want to take a quick look at what's at the bottom of this pan. Because oil floats on top of water. In 30 years, if there's any water in this pan, it would have settled to the bottom. So I want to pop that plug. I'm not going to drain all the oil. I just want to see what's there. So we get to play a quick version of what's in my oil pan. Looks like just clean oil. Well, alright. Not really clean, but it wasn't a pile of water that came out. I didn't see any chunks. This is good enough to start it. Once it warms up, then I'll change it. I should say if it warms up. There's no point in putting 4 or 5 gallons of oil in this thing if it doesn't run at all or has major problems. I noticed the valve cover has wing nuts on it, so we're going to pop that off. I guess technically these aren't wing nuts, but you can undo them by hand, so whatever they are, it's meant for this cover to be taken off easily and often. Alright, maybe taken off easily. Looks like I got to loosen up the throttle linkage. Let's try this again then. There we go. There's 2 reasons I wanted to do this. One was to look for rust, which I don't see. The other thing is I want to check this piece right here. These are a little unusual because you have 2 rocker arms for the valves and you have 1 for a fuel injector. So the fuel injector is on each cylinder and is cam operated. So when that pushes down, that squirts the fuel in. This right here controls how much fuel goes in. This controls your speed. As this thing is stuck, you can get just wide open and the thing will rev to the moon. So we got to make sure that's free. It's not. Totally stuck. I couldn't get this to move, and I wasn't sure if this was the problem or this unit was the problem. There's a little pin that connected these two. I took that out. So now I can move these things independently. And here is the throttle itself. You can see that moves the rod. Here's the fuel shutoff that pulls the rod out. So it appears this unit is free and moving, and this whole shaft is not. Be very careful not to drop anything in here. Now I can move the injectors individually. This front one, yep, there it goes. It was a tiny bit stuck and then moved. This one doesn't want to move. All right, so I've got number 2 and number 6 are stuck. The rest are free. I'm doing some very gentle prying and it is moving. I'm gonna work it back and forth here. Oh, there it moved. Let's try this back one. That one doesn't want to move. I disconnected the fuel lines that feed this fuel injector, and now I can get penetrating oil straight in it. I feel a tiny little bit of wiggle on it, which is a good sign. Notice how on this rocker arm it's lower than the other two. On the other ones, the rocker arm's up. Right now it's in the middle of a fuel injection cycle. So I'm thinking I should turn the engine over till this releases, and that might be easier to free this up. There's a huge gap here, so I know it can go up if it needs to. It's wiggling a little. You can check the other ones. That's still free. Now this one's stuck. Looks like it's trying to be pushed down. That's free. This one's stuck. That's the number 2 cylinder that was stuck the first time. I already freed it. It's now stuck again. So I had to go ahead and pull the injectors out. The way you do that is first loosen up the fuel lines and get those out of the way. Now we take off these rocker arms, which are pretty well torqued on there. We get the rocker arm assembly up and out of the way here. And then we can sneak a 9/16 in there. This bolt holds the bracket that holds the injector in. We sneak this little bracket out of here. There we go. Now the injector should just pop right out, but there's a lot of carbon and stuff built up in there, so we're gonna pry it. Oop. Knock over the camera. Knock over the camera again. There we go. Now we just pull the injector out of here. Heat will help free these up. I don't want to use too much. I'm going to heat them up to engine temperature because that should be fine. I've got a hot plate set to 180. It's full of engine oil, so let's dunk our whole injector right in. And pretty soon that'll be at normal operating temperature, so it should be fine. And try a gentle tap here. I pushed it down and the spring stays compressed. It's not popping back up. So this thing is still stuck. Let's dip it in the oil again. It's been in here a little while. Let's see what we got. Notice that coil spring is fully extended. Heat can be helpful. While it's still hot, I'm going to give it some light taps. Oh yeah, that moves easy. Freed right up. This ride that slides in and out actually has gear teeth cut in it, and that rotates a piece inside, and that determines how much fuel is injected. Out would be less, in would be more. When this is pressed, it injects out the bottom. Like that. That one's ready to be reinstalled. I actually looked up the torque spec for this. It said 20 to 25 foot-pounds on these clamp bolts. There we go. And then we reinstall the rocker shaft here. The specs I found called for our 90 to 100 foot-pounds on the rocker arm shaft bolts. There's 95 and 95. Still moves free. That's good. I've taken care of all the injectors that were stuck, but I remember this one moved fine until it pressed the plunger down and then it got stuck. I want to see if these are going to have the same problem. I can press the plunger down by hand and move this, and it starts to get sticky. So I'm just going to use the screwdriver as a wedge to hold the piston down. It's stuck. I'm going to take this one out and make sure it's all free before I crank the engine over, because as soon as I turn it over, it would have gotten stuck. I found that 5 out of the 6 injectors were stuck. After freeing them all up, I put it back together. This is what we're supposed to see. I notice it looks like there's holes in this fuel cap. Yeah, those go clear through. I can see diesel in there too. Let's see what this looks like. That just looks like diesel. Let it a little bit run out. Yeah, that looks fine. All right, close this up. Call it good. Now we go from the fuel tank to the fuel filter. I'm going to pop open the drain in this fuel filter just to see what we got on the bottom. Catch it in something clean. Now if there's any water, it would have floated to the bottom. We'll see it in this. There's a lot of debris that came out, but I don't see any water droplets. So we're going to completely ignore that debris. That's what the filter's for anyway. Call this good. I don't like the holes in this cap. Even though it doesn't seem like there's water in there now, there will be. I'm going to steal that cap, because I don't think I'm going to use that tank at all. No holes at all in this one. Leaks fixed. Looks like this is the battery tray here. That was a red cable hooked directly to the ground. And then we got another cable. That's a black cable hooked directly to ground. Broken tubing. That might be a positive cable. Jammed in the suspension. The positive cable looks okay. Then we have the wire that goes to the alternator, looks okay. This is the wire that goes to all the power in the cab. This is not exactly okay for a live wire. I'm just going to remove this whole thing. Got to make a connector here for rerouting the wire, and I saw this. It's worn completely through down to bare metal. There, fixed enough. My parallel old terminals is getting pretty slim. They're pretty bad with broken off bolts in them. So I went and popped for a new one. I realized I wanted $9 for just one of these. But they sold a 10-pack for $22. I've got spares now. You can tell the level of care the last person had for this vehicle. That terminal has been smashed down with a hammer, a lot. Enough to make it very not round. And now we can get the shape right. Let's hit the button and see what happens. Well, that was awesome. I can't believe that just started. I was expecting starter fluid, stuff like that. But we got something here. Just saw another minor problem. This is all wet with fuel. Apparently coming from there. Maybe there used to be a pressure gauge, someone took it off. I don't know. But we got to stop that before we try this again. I fixed the leak by installing a pressure gauge. I didn't know it at the time, but apparently there's a bad connection there. You probably saw the sparks. So we're going to fix that before we go any further. I wasn't expecting projectiles. That is awfully round. I filled up the coolant. Took almost 4 gallons to get where I could see it. It wouldn't idle on its own. I had to keep hitting the throttle to keep it going. As it ran, it started to get a little better. Looked like I was gaining a few cylinders as it went. Got another fuel leak. I couldn't find the leak in the fuel pump, so I put a camera on it to isolate it. Come to find out, it was fuel coming out of the exhaust. So I attached an aluminum foil deflector, put a drain pan on the bottom, so any fuel that comes out should go that way and not that way. The fuel pressure looked okay, about 20 psi. Oil pressure looks good. Everything looked like it was coming around. And then all of a sudden it wasn't. Figured it wouldn't hurt to check the air filter. That is many years of very fine dust in there. I don't think people maintain this truck. It wasn't starting, and I wasn't getting any fuel pressure. And we go through the fuel system. First we have the tank. There's about 10 gallons or so of really, really old diesel in here. I added about 10 gallons of new stuff to it, so it's half good. Then there's a line coming out. This is a suction line that goes to a primary fuel filter. If there's any leaks in this side, that could cause a fuel pressure issue. This canister unbolts from the top. There's a cartridge type filter in here. You gotta go ahead and replace that. The new filter also comes with O-rings and gaskets. This should eliminate any chance of a vacuum leak here and get us a little freer flowing too. The old rubber seal is really dried and stuck in there. Using a small flat blade screwdriver, try to get in there, dig into it, and pry it out. Got it. You use the same screwdriver to make sure there's no remaining junk in there. Got my new filter in. Could use this handy spigot on the tank to fill this up. That'll do. And carefully slide that into place, hopefully not spilling too much. Oh, come on, line up for me. Now out of that filter goes to a line that goes underneath, and that goes to this fuel pump. This fuel pump is driven mechanically off the engine. It's a gear drive unit, not a diaphragm pump, so they're pretty reliable. But they do have, right here, is a pressure relief valve. It's possible that pressure relief valve got stuck open. For now, I'm hoping that didn't happen, and we're going to keep following where the line goes out with pressure. And that line goes across the engine again, right along here, to this fuel filter. And on this fuel filter, that's one with my pressure gauge. Now the pressure goes to the side, which is the outside of the canister, through the filter itself, and up out the middle in the center through this line right here. You can see it goes out to the engine there, our pressure gauge here. And one thing that makes me suspicious of this one, when I went to look for a number, I noticed there's diesel fuel on the back side, which means that gasket's leaking. It could be from age, or it could be from overpressurized and not being able to get through the filter. I'm hoping that's my real problem. Luckily, both these filters had numbers I could read, and the local Napa had them in stock. Made life easy. Gonna fill this one up with fuel too. The fuel goes into the head here. You can see the casting has kind of a double hump here. The top rail is a fuel in. The bottom one that connects to this line down here is fuel out. And that gets returned to the tank. Now I know I get air in the system, hopefully not too much. Alright, let the starter cool for a minute. Now I noticed this first filter has some extra plugs on it. I think I'm going to use those to my advantage. Because there's a possibility the fuel pump has lost its prime. So we're going to check that. Let me take out one of these plugs. Replace it with a fitting. I filled this little tank with diesel. I'm going to hook this tank on here and then go up in the air with it. And now we're gravity feeding straight into the system, well above the level of the output here.
This is where the tank runs dry.
I saw some fuel pressure, and I think I emptied this tank. So I'm going to take it off, put the plug back in, see if we got the fuel pump primed, and it'll keep running.
Back in business.
These look like little wind deflectors on the side here. The other one was pretty bent. There's rope and stuff tied to them. I don't know why. And I don't think I need them. So I'm just going to remove them. There we go. I'm going to get rid of some of the stuff that's all falling down in the cab. I don't need the fancy stuff like upholstery. Oh hey, it has seat belts. At least on one side. This fender is almost hitting the tire, so I'm going to straighten that out a little bit. Looks like this is where it got hit. So we'll start there. There, bodywork done. Here is our air compressor to run the air brakes and such. Now it looks like it's had some maintenance done to it, so I'm assuming it works fine. But I've got to figure out how it hooks up. I've got a line here, and that goes to a pressure sensor on the block. So that's probably an oil feed line that feeds oil into the crankshaft bearings there, which means that's probably a drain line that takes away the oil it's feeding in. We also have two lines on this side of the head, and this one goes towards the water pump area, and this one goes, it looks like this line has coolant in it with temperature sensors, which means this is a liquid cooled compressor. It uses the engine coolant to keep it cool. So those are identified. Which leads us to these. This one goes over, and it goes to right here by the air intake. So that is probably the air inlet, and it uses filtered air from the main system. Which leaves this line. This line goes down here, and that's got to be our air supply line. This has 2 air tanks. Looks like that would be the first one in line. I think they call it a wet tank. And that has a line that comes out here, out in the middle of nowhere. It looks to the end of the line, that was laying in the ground. If this was disconnected and laying under the vehicle, there must be a connection somewhere down there. This looks like the outlet of the compressor, which is completely disconnected. This fitting does not go into that fitting. But it looks like people scavenged parts off this, so there might have been something in there that got removed to be used on another vehicle, and that might be my connection there. If I put shop air to this, what'll happen? Probably should unclog it first. Use a flat blade screwdriver, works good as an auger. It's kind of like a wood drill. I know when the truck was towed here, these brakes were released. And I see manual release, remove cap and unscrew bolt. I'm assuming the cap used to be over here, and there's a bolt. So if it was unscrewed to release it, that means I need to screw it back in to get them to work again. As I turn it in, I can see those arms moving. As far as I can go here, so that must be right. Do a little pressurizing. I hear air coming out up there. This is where the air goes to the trailer brakes. Looks like this is some kind of valve, might be some kind of safety deal. And below it, I have 2 air lines that are disconnected. And I'm betting these were supposed to hook up to those ports. Let's see what's leaking. I guess I can't really call it leaking if they're totally disconnected. I have a lot of air coming out this one. I'm not having air come out this one. So I've learned something. Not sure what I've learned, but it's something. I follow that line down here, but right now, we're not too worried about trailer brakes. We gotta get the truck working first. For now, I'm gonna replace the line with a pipe plug. Eventually I'll have to put this back to get the trailer brake lines working. This will simplify our troubleshooting. Leak fixed. We'll try pressurizing again, see what happens. I don't hear obvious leaks. I hear less obvious leaks. Something's still leaking. I made an airline adapter that'll probably hold up, at least for a little while. Now I can pressurize it and then go chase the leak. We got air leaks everywhere. I hear leaks in this area. There's lots of places this can leak from. We're getting a little bit of air pressure here. Weirdly, this line is not leaking. The completely disconnected one. This thing hasn't had air in it in 30 years or so. Something is making a noise there. I have to figure that one out. So I think this one's the most bizarre. We're up to 50 psi or so. That knob's not leaking too badly anymore.
These valves seem to have fixed themselves. That was handy.
There's an access panel under the dashboard here, and now I can get to all sorts of air lines and things. And these are the lines going to that door. The top of the dashboard had an access panel too, and I followed that along, and it goes right there to this knob. So it looks like that puts air to the windshield washer. It's supposed to be spring-loaded. So you push for wash and let go. The air leak's fixed just by freeing up that knob, or at least that one air leak's fixed. We're getting more air pressure. Now this is our actual pedal. I can't get it to move at all, so that's a bad thing. Oh, did it move? Oh, it moved. It's moving slightly.
The brake pedal didn't work at all. One of the knobs on the dashboards made things happen. On one side. On the other side, it just changed the speed of the leak.
We need axle shafts, because going is the next step. I've got my airline as an umbilical cord for the brakes, and I have enough laid out that I can drive forward a little bit before I run out of room.
I had my son helping out with the camera to capture this monumentous occasion.
Camera time. This doesn't seem very monumentous.
It has been parked since 1996.
I take it back.
Right now I have absolutely no air in the system at all. And this front tire turns freely. Now I'm going to add air. Still turning, still filling with air. There it goes. The brakes just grabbed on. So I've got a problem with the floor valve. It's telling the brakes to go on even when no one's pressing the pedal. So when I tried to move it thinking just one wheel was locked on, it actually had all four-wheel brakes on. Now here's something I didn't expect. I always thought with these spring brakes, these tires can be locked up when it doesn't have air. They're not. Let's put air to them and see what happens. Wheels turn free. Let me hit some of those valves. This piece is outwards. Now the brakes have locked on.
I needed to get to the foot valve, but of course that was rusted solid. So I'm going to persuade it apart.
I got this brake pedal off. That right there is what actually presses the valve. Right here. And this has a nice rubber boot. It's supposed to keep dirt and water out, which of course is torn. But that piece comes out. And there's our actual valve. Put a pair of vice grips on the end I can get to. Started working it around, and it seems to be moving now. I hooked up air, and now I know I'm getting air to this valve. I can see all the leaks in it. So that's a good sign. At least things might start moving now. This is the right rear tire where I never saw any movement out of the brake cam. Right now there's no air and the tire's locked up. I'm going to add air and see if it frees up. I've got 90 psi in the system now. Still locked up solid. Now I'm going to go hit the valves inside. We got air hissing out the end. Tire's still locked up. I'm going to undo the manual release here until the tire turns. Oh, there we go. The wheel's still turning, so we've definitely disabled this brake. It won't be stopping us, but it won't be stopping us. And that's the big thing, is I want to go now. We got 3 other wheels for the stopping part. When I got this truck, one of the rear tires wouldn't hold air. It might have something to do with the holes in the side of the tire. You can see right through that one. And it was missing one of the rear duals. So I need 2 more tires, which is a perfect excuse to go mining at the Low Buck mine. Luckily, along with the trailers came some spare tires. Seems like it holds air. Let's see how hard they are to take off. Not easy. Move to this next set over, I'm making progress. There we go. Green and red, it's a Christmas tire. Well, red and green is nice sometimes a year. It's out of season right now. I bought this safety green to match the tractor that it didn't actually match, so I wasn't able to really use it. So I'm going to use it here. Good safety green, and that'll make this truck more safe. Masking done. I started going through the tires on this and making them all match. Then I realized I can't actually finish the job because most of the tires on this are 1020s. These are 1022s. They're a different size. So I'm going to put the two of these together. Next time I'm up at the mine, I'm going to go digging for some more 1020s. I ran a new wire through the main harness and installed the engine start switch. And that's the only electrics we have here. Starting pretty good now. Takes a little while for the governor to catch up. Shifter is a little bulky. There we go. The brakes work. The brakes work good. All right, let's see if I can find reverse. Still neutral. First gear seems to be all I could find. The shift linkage might be what we're fixing next.
I decided that now that the transmission is splashing all around, reverse might fix itself, so I was going to ignore that.
I made a few attempts at cleaning this air filter, but no matter what I do, there's still a lot more of that fine silty dust in it. So I looked into buying one. These things are way over 100 bucks, usually. I found this on eBay. They said it's new, just with box damage. 20 bucks. Looks fine to me. Ah, it even fits. Air filter's installed. And while I was doing that, I was looking at this. This is right in the top of the air filter, little flip-up cap. I wonder if that's for ether or something in cold weather. You can eject it straight in the intake system and it goes right in. Not sure. That's my guess. So far I've been limited in my driving distance because the brakes are running off shop air. But now, I got a check valve. This is a piece that was missing to connect the air compressor to the rest of the system. I had to order it through O'Reilly's. Took a couple days to get here, but I finally have it in hand. This is just simply a one-way valve, so air goes from the compressor to the system, and the system doesn't pressurize the compressor when the engine's not running. So hopefully this piece makes the entire unit a standalone, and then I can actually drive somewhere. Check valve is installed. We got air pressure building, holding steady at 60. This throttle pedal doesn't feel right at all. And this roller, of course, is frozen solid, so the pedal doesn't want to actually do what it's supposed to. Oh, I guess there's more than one piece in there. Now this one definitely looks brass. That one feels like plastic. Now it actually rolls. With all that moving better, move the pedal a bit. It's kind of an on-off switch. Luckily, this engine has a high-speed governor, and I'm told the proper way to drive it is just sit on the governor and let it run full speed. That might be the right setting for the pedal. Of course, here at Lowbuck Garage, we're all about safety, so we're going to help that out a little. I'm adding a bit of baling wire to the pedal. That way, when I press it down, I can pull it back. So that should be much safer.
I was all ready to finally drive some distance. The The throttle pedal didn't work. I was finally able to just idle along with the governor, so I could do a little bit of driving.
Apparently one of my magnetic lights wasn't that magnetic. That probably won't work anymore.
But eventually I did have to get the throttle pedal to work.
Complicated driving.
It was time for a brake test. They worked really well. I did a few laps around, and every time I went around it seemed to work better. I like improvement.
That's it for this video. This truck is good enough to haul my trailers. There's a few minor inconveniences like that on-off throttle pedal. Not being able to put it in reverse will add a little time to the job. I do have the Oliver loader and the 4x4 forklift up there. I could push it backwards and drive in a big circle to get where I want to go. So I think there'll be a part 2 to this one where I finish those last little details. And I'd like your opinion. I thought about painting the cab white when I was painting those wheels,
Because I really like that color combo in this truck.
the junkyard dog look it has going now is kind of working for me. So let me know if you think I should paint it. Either way, I've always wanted to drive one since I was a kid, and it is a lot of fun to drive. Hope you're having fun too, and we'll see you next time. Now that it's warm, we can do that oil change. Probably wouldn't hurt to have some fresh stuff. Less than 30 years old. Really doesn't look too bad though.